Nobody likes war, right? And I guarantee the President of the United States is not interested in getting us, in the kind of long-term quagmires that we've seen in years past. That is not a risk with this president at all. What he has also said consistently for 10, 15 years, maybe even longer, is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and he's willing to take action, diplomatic, ideally, but military action if he has to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's all this is about. We don't want the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon.
Well, that's Vice President J.D. Vance reassuring voters yesterday that the Iran conflict is only temporary. There's no intention of a long-term war. We are in week 3. Israel is now under fire this morning from President Trump after launching targeted strikes on Iran's so-called South Pars gas field overnight. It sent oil prices even higher. It caused Iran to hit back, and Iran hit back at the Qataris' LNG facilities. The president wrote on Truth Social, no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field, unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar, in which instance the USA, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. Joining me now is former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland. KT, good to see you. Thanks for weighing in on all of this incredible conflict. Your assessment of this conflict, and with particular interest that President Trump is ensuring that he does not want to hit the oil infrastructure. He understands the impact of oil prices going higher on the domestic economy.
You know, there are 2 reasons for this. One is he understands the impact of the world economy of higher oil or natural gas prices. But the second part is that what happens the day after? So when the regime collapses or it's just no longer able to function, who's in charge and what capability do they have to rebuild Iran? I mean, I would go back when I was in the Nixon administration. Iran was one of our closest allies in the region. Iran could be an American ally again. And I think that's why President Trump has been reluctant to go after the economic engine of Iran, the oil, the natural gas fields. He could do that. He could do that, and he could crush Iran for a generation. So far, what he's done is he's focused on the military capabilities, the intelligence capabilities, the regime, and particularly the nuclear capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, the threat of Iranian terror cells is rising across the U.S. right now. So it's not just happening over there. The Department of Homeland Security is still shut down for a 34th day. And we had recent terrorist attacks. You know, we're looking at investigations into 4 attacks, one at a Michigan synagogue, a shooting at Old Dominion University. We've got threats to the Homeland. The DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, talked about this yesterday during a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing. Watch this.
The United States continues to face a complex and evolving threat landscape with a geographically diverse set of Islamist terrorist actors seeking to propagate their ideology globally and harm Americans. Islamist terrorist groups have shifted toward focusing on executing information operations to spread propaganda and inspire or enable individuals located in or with access to the West. Strict U.S. border enforcement measures and increased deportations of individuals with suspected links to Islamist terrorists have reduced access to the homeland and removed some potential sources of future terrorist attacks. However, the intelligence community assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced, or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range.
KT, your assessment.
Look, I find it really unconscionable that the Democrats, looking at a significant threat to the United States, of either lone wolves who are activated and encouraged by the Democrat and the media, far-left, anti-Israel, anti-America, pro-Iran rhetoric, or the fact that the Biden administration had an open border policy. Who knows who came in, who were potential sleeper agents for the Iranian or the terrorist groups. And the Democrats are refusing to defend the United States. They're refusing to fund the very people who will keep us safe at home. So I find that really unconscionable. But I want to speak to a second to what Tulsi said about the bigger threat. Look, you got to deal with this now before Iran gets nuclear weapons. Not only is it a nuclear weapon, not only is it the highly enriched uranium, they also have to build missiles to reach the United States. And we saw that even the day after we attacked their sites, they started rebuilding again. Iran is not going to change. It wants nuclear weapons because it knows with nuclear weapons, it rules the region and it can blackmail the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I said that earlier, that you got to get in there before they actually have the wherewithal to do it. Mehet Cook, jump in here.
Thank you so much. So we know specifically with Hezbollah that they have operatives in the United States. Some say even more than al-Qaeda based on what Joe Biden did with our border. When you're looking at the threat today, it's not just a terrorist threat. They have intelligence and sophistication in terms of how they're going to be targeting some of these soft targets across the country. Do you have confidence that we know who's in our country and the FBI has actually identified these threats with DHS on the line in terms of funding?
I think they have the capability of doing it, but they have to be funded to do that. And again, I would put that on Congress's lap. Why are you not defending the United States? Why are you not funding the very people who work for the United States government, who are really good at this? Why have you refused to fund the ability of our government and our officials to defend the United States, to see the threats coming and to preempt them before they attack?
So what's your take on the China angle here? The president obviously postponed his trip, told Beijing that he'll do it in 5 or 6 weeks. It was supposed to begin at the end of this month. I keep scratching my head. I mean, how do you go to China in the middle of a war with Iran when we know that China has been supporting Iran? Okay, let's be clear here. China has been supporting Iran. First of all, they buy 90% of their oil exports. And they've also supported them in other ways during this conflict. So obviously the president made the right decision not to go. But even in 5 or 6 weeks, I'm still wondering what we're doing here with communist China as it undermines the United States at every turn. KT.
You know, Donald Trump is playing four-dimensional chess with this Iran war. Yeah. Obviously, the first part is to stop the Iranian nuclear threat. But it's also about China. It's about cutting off the Chinese energy supply. China has needed cheap Iranian and Venezuelan and Russian oil to manufacture for their manufacturing revolution. They need it again for the information age that we're now entering. President Trump now, because of drill baby drill, the United States is energy dominant. Because of our now control over the Venezuelan oil, we've got that. And it's terrific if we can make sure that China doesn't have what it needs to beat us in the information age.
Yeah, absolutely. KT, it was a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much. We so appreciate you joining me this morning. We'll see you soon. KT McFarland. We'll be right back. Stay with us.